Look into a mirror right now. Look at your eyes. Notice the white parts, the sclera, that bright white surrounding your colored iris. Now think about this. You are the only animal on Earth with eyes like that. Every other primate, every ape, every monkey, every mammal, they all have dark eyes, brown or black all the way across. You can't see the whites, you can't tell where they're looking, but humans, you can see exactly where a human is looking, because we have these bright white eyes, and we're the only ones. Chimpanzees don't have them, gorillas don't have them, orangutans don't have them. Dogs, cats, horses, elephants, whales, dolphins. None of them have white eyes, just us, just humans. And we have no idea why. Scientists have theories about communication, about cooperation, about social signaling, but we can't fully explain why evolution gave humans this unique feature, or why it's so universal. Every human population, every ethnicity, every person on Earth, white eyes. It's one of the traits that makes us distinctly human, and it's a mystery. If you're using this to fall asleep, perfect. Let this mystery wash over you as you drift off. And if you're still awake in a couple minutes, I'll ask you to subscribe. Because this channel explores mysteries like this. Things we can't explain. Things that make you question what you think you know about being human. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, what time it is, and what color your eyes are. I love reading these, because eyes create such strong reactions. They're called the windows to the soul for a reason, and human eyes are unique, not just because of color, but because of those whites, those visible sclera. Let's start with the basics. What are the whites of the eyes? The sclera. It's the tough outer layer of the eyeball. It protects the eye, maintains its shape, provides attachment for the muscles that move the eye. Every vertebrate has sclera. Fish, birds, reptiles, mammals, all of them have this protective layer. But in most animals, the sclera is dark, pigmented, brown or black, same color as the iris. So when you look at a dog's eye or a cat's eye, you see one dark surface, maybe a visible pupil, but you can't easily tell where they're looking. The iris and sclera blend together. Humans are different. Our sclera is white, bright white, or at least off-white with visible blood vessels. And this creates high contrast with the colored iris. Blue, green, brown, hazel. Whatever your iris color, it stands out against the white background. This makes gaze direction extremely visible. You can tell exactly where someone is looking, even from across a room, even in your peripheral vision. You see the dark iris move against the white sclera, and your brain automatically tracks it. This is called gaze following, and humans are exceptional at it. Better than any other species, even better than our closest relatives, chimpanzees. Now, before we go deeper, if you're enjoying this exploration, hit that subscribe button. This is We Can't Explain, and we dive deep into evolution's greatest mysteries. Things like why red hair is disappearing, why humans experience déjà vu, why we lost our super strength, all the things that make being human strange and wonderful and inexplicable. New mysteries every week. Subscribe so you don't miss them. Okay, back to white eyes. Let's talk about how unique this really is. 'Cause it's not just rare, it's exclusive. As far as we know, no other species has visible white sclera like humans. Researchers have looked. They've studied primates extensively. Chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, all of our closest relatives. And every single one has dark sclera. The entire visible eye is brown or black. You can't see where they're looking unless you're very close or they turn their head. Some primates have slightly lighter sclera than others, but it's still dark enough to blend with the iris. Not white, not visible. Researchers have also looked at other social mammals: wolves, dolphins, elephants, animals that cooperate in groups. That might benefit from being able to follow each other's gaze. Still dark eyes, no visible sclera. Humans are alone in this trait, completely alone. And that's strange, because usually when a trait is this distinctive, there's an obvious reason, an obvious evolutionary advantage. But with white eyes, the advantage isn't obvious. In fact, it seems like it could be a disadvantage. Here's why. In the animal kingdom, hiding your intentions is usually good. If you're a predator, you don't want your prey to know you're looking at them. If you're prey, you don't want predators to know you've spotted them. Eye contact is often a threat, a challenge, so most animals avoid it or use it strategically. Dark eyes help with this. They hide gaze direction, make it harder to read intentions. White eyes do the opposite. They broadcast your gaze. Tell everyone exactly where you're looking, what you're paying attention to. This makes you more vulnerable, more readable. So why would evolution favor this? What advantage could possibly outweigh the disadvantage of being so transparent? Let's explore the main theories. Theory 1. Cooperative eye hypothesis. This is the most popular theory, proposed by anthropologist Michael Tomasello and his colleagues. The idea is that white eyes evolved to enhance cooperation. Humans are incredibly social. We cooperate in ways no other species does. We hunt together, build together, share knowledge, teach each other, and cooperation requires communication. You need to know what your partners are thinking, what they're paying attention to, what they want you to do. Gaze is a powerful communication tool. If I look at something, you can follow my gaze and see what I'm interested in. Without me saying a word, you know what I'm focused on. This is called joint attention, and it's foundational for human cooperation. White eyes make joint attention easier, way easier. You can see where I'm looking from across the room. You can follow my gaze instantly, and we can coordinate without verbal communication. This would have been incredibly useful for early humans. Hunting big game requires coordination. You need to know where your hunting partners are looking, which animal they're targeting, when to strike. White eyes help with all of this. They allow silent coordination, gaze-based communication. Teaching also benefits. If I'm showing you how to make a tool, you need to follow my gaze. See where I'm looking, what I'm focusing on. White eyes make this easier, make teaching and learning more efficient. So the cooperative eye hypothesis says white eyes evolved because they enhanced cooperation. And the benefits of cooperation outweighed the costs of being readable. This makes sense. And there's evidence to support it. Studies show that humans are much better at following gaze than chimpanzees. Even human infants are better at it. And human infants start following gaze very early, around 6 months old. They see where you're looking and look there too. This is a uniquely human ability. Chimps can do it to some degree, but not as reliably, not as automatically. And studies show that humans use gaze information constantly. In conversation, we track where people are looking. If you're talking to me and you glance at the door, I notice. I might look at the door too, or I might wonder why you're distracted. All of this happens unconsciously, automatically, because our brains are wired to read eyes, and white sclera makes this reading much easier. But this theory has problems. First, correlation isn't causation. Yes, humans cooperate more than other species, and yes, we have white eyes. But that doesn't prove white eyes evolved for cooperation. Maybe cooperation evolved first for other reasons, and white eyes came along as a byproduct. Second, other highly social animals don't have white eyes. Wolves cooperate in packs. Elephants have complex social structures. Dolphins coordinate during hunting. None of them have visible sclera, so cooperation alone doesn't explain it. Third, some researchers argue that the costs of white eyes are too high. Being that readable makes you vulnerable. In competitive situations, you don't want opponents to know where you're looking. In poker, people wear sunglasses for this reason: to hide their gaze, to not give away information. So why would evolution make us permanently transparent? The cooperative eye hypothesis doesn't fully answer this. Sleep well. Dream of eyes that reveal everything. Good night. Theory 2. Self-domestication hypothesis. This is a newer theory, and it's fascinating. The idea is that humans domesticated themselves through a process called self-domestication. What does this mean? Let's back up. When animals are domesticated, they change, physically and behaviorally. Dogs are domesticated wolves, and they look different from wolves. Floppy ears, curly tails, varied coat colors, smaller skulls, less aggressive behavior. These changes happen consistently across different domesticated species: pigs, cows, horses, foxes. When you domesticate them, similar changes occur. And one of those changes is visible sclera. Domesticated animals sometimes develop lighter colored eyes, including visible white sclera, not as pronounced as humans, but more visible than their wild counterparts. So some researchers think humans went through self-domestication, that we selected for less aggressive, more cooperative individuals. And as a byproduct, we developed traits similar to domesticated animals, including white eyes, smaller faces, less prominent brow ridges. This would explain why white eyes emerged, not as a direct adaptation, but as a side effect of selecting for friendliness and cooperation. It's called the domestication syndrome, a package of traits that appear together during domestication, and humans show many of these traits. Compared to our ancestors and other primates, we're less aggressive, more tolerant, better at reading social cues, and we have white eyes. This theory is compelling because it doesn't require white eyes to be directly beneficial. They just need to be linked to traits that are beneficial, like reduced aggression, and the genes that control these traits might affect multiple features simultaneously. This is pleiotropy again. One gene, multiple effects. But this theory also has limitations. We don't know for sure that humans underwent self-domestication. It's an hypothesis, not proven. And even if we did, we don't know exactly when it happened or what triggered it. Some researchers think it happened 200,000 years ago. Others think 50,000 years ago. The timing matters, because we need to know when white eyes evolved, and we don't. There's no fossil evidence of eye color. Sclera doesn't fossilize, so we're guessing based on modern humans and comparisons to other species. Theory 3. Sexual selection. This theory suggests that white eyes became attractive, sexually desirable, and that's why they spread. Sexual selection is different from natural selection. Natural selection favors traits that help you survive. Sexual selection favors traits that help you attract mates. Sometimes these overlap, Sometimes they don't. Peacock tails are a classic example. They don't help peacocks survive. In fact, they make them more vulnerable to predators. But peahens find them attractive, so males with bigger, brighter tails get more mating opportunities. And the trait spreads. Could white eyes be similar? A sexually selected trait? Maybe. Eyes are central to human attractiveness. We look at eyes constantly. Beautiful eyes is a universal compliment, across cultures, across time, and white sclera makes eyes more expressive, more visible, more striking. Maybe our ancestors found white eyes attractive and preferentially mated with people who had them. Over time, this would increase the frequency of white eyes in the population until everyone had them. This theory explains why the trait is universal, why it's in every human population. If it was sexually selected, it would spread quickly, especially in small populations where founder effects can amplify traits. But there are problems with this theory too. First, we don't have evidence that white eyes increase attractiveness across all contexts. In some cultures, clear, bright whites are associated with health and youth, so they're desirable. But in other contexts, very white sclera can look harsh or startling, so it's not clear that white eyes are universally attractive. Second, if white eyes were sexually selected, you'd expect variation. Some people with whiter sclera than others, but that's not what we see. Everyone has white sclera. It's universal. Sexual selection usually creates variation. Think of human height, facial features, body shapes, all variable because it's sexual selection. White eyes aren't variable, they're constant, which suggests natural selection, not sexual selection. Theory 4. Gaze aversion. Hypothesis. This is a less popular theory, but interesting. It suggests that white eyes evolved to make gaze aversion more visible. Gaze aversion is when you look away. Break eye contact. It's a submissive gesture, a way to de-escalate conflict. In many primate species, prolonged eye contact is aggressive. It's a challenge, a threat. So subordinate individuals avoid eye contact. They look away to show they're not a threat. With dark eyes, it's hard to tell if someone is averting their gaze. You have to watch their head position. But with white eyes, gaze aversion is instantly visible. You see the iris move away. See the whites shift. This makes social communication clearer, reduces ambiguity, prevents accidental conflicts. The theory suggests that as humans became more complex socially, we needed clearer signals. And white eyes provided that. But this theory is weak, because it doesn't explain why humans would need this more than other social primates. Chimpanzees have complex social hierarchies. They use gaze aversion too. But they don't have white eyes, so the theory doesn't fully hold up. Theory 5. Random genetic drift. This is the null hypothesis, the idea that white eyes have no adaptive value at all, that they appeared by chance and spread by chance through genetic drift. Genetic drift is when gene frequencies change randomly, especially in small populations. If early humans went through population bottlenecks, random traits could become fixed. Not because they're beneficial, but just because of chance. Maybe white eyes are one of those traits, a neutral mutation that happened to spread. This is possible, but most scientists think it's unlikely because white eyes are so distinctive, so universal, so consistent across all human populations. Random drift usually doesn't create such uniform traits, so while it's possible, most researchers think there's probably an adaptive explanation. We just haven't found it yet. Let's talk about what white eyes actually do, functionally. because regardless of why they evolved, they have real effects on human behavior and communication. First, joint attention. As we mentioned, white eyes make it easy to follow someone's gaze. Studies with infants show this clearly. Human babies as young as 6 months can follow adult gaze. They see where you're looking, and they look there too. This is foundational for learning, for language development, for social bonding. If I point at something and you follow my gaze, we're sharing attention, experiencing the same thing together. This creates a bond, a shared understanding, and it allows teaching. I can show you something without touching it or speaking, just by looking at it. You follow my gaze, and you learn. Second, emotional communication. Eyes are incredibly expressive, and white sclera enhances that expression. When you're surprised, your eyes widen. The whites become more visible. When you're angry, you might narrow your eyes. The whites become less visible. When you're looking at someone with affection, the whites frame the iris beautifully. All of this emotional information is amplified by the white background. It makes the eyes the focal point of the face, the primary source of emotional information. This is why we say the eyes are the windows to the soul, because they reveal so much. And white sclera is part of why they're so revealing. Third, trust and honesty. There's evidence that people perceive individuals with visible, clear white sclera as more trustworthy. Yellowed or reddened sclera can indicate illness, fatigue, or substance use. So clear white sclera signals health, alertness, reliability. This matters in social interactions, especially in cooperative contexts. If I'm deciding whether to trust you, I might unconsciously assess your eyes, and white sclera plays a role in that assessment. Fourth, deception detection. White eyes make it harder to lie effectively, because your gaze can give you away. If you're lying, you might avoid eye contact, or glance in a revealing direction. With white eyes, these micro-movements are visible, even in peripheral vision, so white eyes might have evolved as an honest signal, a way to prove you're not hiding anything. In a highly cooperative species, honest signals are valuable. They allow trust to develop. And white eyes, by making gaze direction visible, function as an honest signal. You can't easily hide where you're looking, so you're forced to be more honest about your attention and intentions. Now let's talk about the anatomy of white eyes in more detail, because the structure is fascinating, and it reveals how humans are different. The sclera is made of dense connective tissue, collagen fibers arranged in layers. In most mammals, this tissue contains melanin, the same pigment that colors skin and hair. Melanin in the sclera makes it brown or black, providing some protection from UV radiation. In humans, the sclera has very little melanin, so it appears white. But it's not actually pure white. If you look closely, you can see blood vessels. Tiny red lines. These vessels supply oxygen and nutrients to the eye, and they're visible because the sclera is so pale. In some people, the sclera can have a bluish tint. This is more common in infants and people with very thin sclera. The blue is from underlying tissue showing through, like how veins look blue under pale skin. As we age, the sclera can yellow slightly. This is due to fat deposits and changes in the tissue structure. But compared to other animals, even aged human sclera is quite pale. The amount of visible sclera also varies slightly between individuals. Some people have more prominent eyes, which means more sclera is visible. Others have deeper set eyes, which means less sclera shows. But in all cases, the sclera is white. and the iris contrasts against it. There's also a connection between sclera visibility and eye shape. Humans have rounder eyes than other primates. Our eyeballs are more spherical, and our eye sockets are positioned to allow more horizontal gaze range. This means we can look side to side more easily without moving our heads, and when we do, more sclera becomes visible. Other primates have to turn their heads to look in different directions. We just move our eyes. This difference is subtle but significant. It makes human gaze tracking even more effective. Let's talk about cultural aspects of eyes and gaze. Because white eyes aren't just biological, they're cultural too. In every culture, eyes have special meaning. They're associated with sight, knowledge, truth. The evil eye is a concept in many cultures. The idea that a malicious gaze can cause harm. This only makes sense in a species where gaze is highly visible, where eyes are powerful communicators. In Western culture, direct eye contact is often valued. It signals confidence, honesty, engagement. Avoiding eye contact can be seen as suspicious or weak, but in other cultures, prolonged eye contact is disrespectful, especially with authority figures. In Japan, for example, excessive eye contact can be seen as aggressive or rude. In some indigenous cultures, children are taught to lower their gaze when speaking to elders. These cultural variations show how much humans value gaze as communication. We've built entire systems of etiquette around it. Rules about when to look away, how long to hold eye contact. And all of this is possible because of white eyes, because gaze is visible. If we had dark eyes like chimpanzees, none of these cultural norms would exist. We couldn't enforce them, couldn't even perceive the violations. There are also aesthetic aspects, beauty standards related to eyes. Bright eyes are universally associated with youth and health. Cosmetics enhance this. Eyeliner makes the eye shape more defined. Mascara makes lashes darker, which contrasts with white sclera. Eye whitening drops are sold to reduce redness and make sclera appear brighter. All of this shows how much humans value the white of the eye. It's not just functional, it's aesthetic, cultural. Let's discuss when white eyes evolved, because timing matters. The problem is, we don't know. Sclera doesn't fossilize. Soft tissue is rarely preserved, so we can't look at ancient human fossils and determine their eye color. We have to infer from other evidence: genetic, comparative, circumstantial. Some researchers think white eyes evolved early, 200,000 to 300,000 years ago, when anatomically modern humans first appeared. If this is true, white eyes are part of what makes us anatomically modern, part of the package that defines Homo sapiens. Others think white eyes evolved more recently, perhaps 50,000 to 100,000 years ago, around the time of the human revolution, when language, art, complex tools, and symbolic behavior emerged. If this is true, white eyes are connected to our cognitive leap, our becoming culturally modern. We don't know which timeline is correct. Maybe we'll never know. But the timing matters for understanding why white eyes evolved. If they evolved early, they might have been important for survival, for basic cooperation in hunting and gathering. If they evolved late, they might have been important for complex communication, for language and culture. Or maybe the timing varied. Maybe different human populations developed white eyes at different times, and then intermixing spread the trait until it was universal. This is all speculation. We simply don't have enough evidence. What we do know is that modern humans universally have white eyes, and Neanderthals probably didn't. We've never found evidence of white sclera in reconstructions of Neanderthal anatomy. So white eyes might be one of the things that distinguishes us from our closest extinct relatives. Let's explore the vulnerability issue more deeply, because this is the big puzzle. Why would evolution make us so readable? In nature, most animals benefit from unpredictability, from being hard to read. Prey animals don't want predators to know they've noticed them. Predators don't want prey to know they're being stalked. Social animals don't always want groupmates to know their intentions. Deception has value. Strategic ambiguity has value. But humans with white eyes, we're transparent. You know exactly where I'm looking. This should be a disadvantage. And yet, it's universal in humans. Some researchers think the answer is that humans are so cooperative that the benefits outweigh the costs, that we gained more from coordinating with allies than we lost from being readable to enemies. Others think that white eyes evolved in a context where humans had no serious predators. By the time white eyes emerged, humans were apex predators. We had fire, weapons, tools, so the cost of being visible to predators was minimal. The benefit of cooperating with other humans was massive. Still, others think white eyes function as an honest signal precisely because they're costly. In signaling theory, costly signals are valuable because they're hard to fake. If I have white eyes, I can't easily hide my intentions. So when I cooperate with you, you know it's genuine. This builds trust, allows deeper cooperation. The cost of transparency becomes a benefit, a way to credibly commit to cooperation. This is elegant, but hard to test. Now let's talk about pathology. What happens when sclera isn't white? Because this reveals how important white sclera is for normal human perception. Yellowing of the sclera is called scleral icterus. It's often a sign of liver problems. Jaundice. People notice immediately because we're so attuned to the whiteness of eyes. Yellowed eyes look unhealthy, and they are. Reddened sclera indicates bloodshot eyes, from irritation, lack of sleep, allergies, or substance use. Again, it's immediately noticeable, and it affects how we perceive the person. Tired. Unhealthy. Possibly unreliable. Bluish sclera can indicate osteogenesis imperfecta, a genetic disorder affecting connective tissue. The blueness comes from abnormally thin sclera, allowing underlying tissue to show through. It's rare, but when present, it's striking, because it deviates from the expected white. All of these variations show how sensitive humans are to scleral color. We expect white. Deviations register immediately and carry meaning. This sensitivity probably evolved because scleral color provides useful information about health, alertness, emotional state, and white sclera is the baseline against which we measure. Let's discuss gaze following in more detail, because this is where white eyes really shine. Studies have shown that human infants can follow gaze by 6 months, but it's not just about seeing where someone is looking. It's about understanding what that means. By 12 months, infants understand that when you look at something, you're interested in it. They can use your gaze to learn about objects, about preferences, about the world. This is called social referencing, using another person's attention as information. It's foundational for learning, for language acquisition, for cultural transmission, and it relies on being able to see where people are looking. White eyes make this possible from across a room, even in dim light, even in peripheral vision. Chimpanzees can follow gaze too, but they're not as good at it, and they require closer proximity. More obvious head movements. Humans are better, and white eyes are part of why. Research has compared humans and chimps directly. In one study, human infants and young chimps were shown a person looking at one of two objects. Human infants reliably looked at the correct object, following the adult's gaze. Chimps were less reliable. They sometimes looked at the wrong object or didn't follow gaze at all. The difference? Chimps couldn't see the whites of the eyes as easily. They had to rely on head direction. Humans could see the iris position against the white sclera, giving them more precise information. This tiny difference has huge consequences for learning, for cooperation, for cultural evolution. Another interesting aspect is the gaze cue effect. This is when you automatically look where someone else is looking. Even if you don't intend to, if we're talking and I suddenly glance to your right, you'll likely glance there too. It's automatic. Unconscious. You can't help it. This only works because white eyes make gaze direction so visible, and it shows how deeply gaze following is wired into the human brain. Now let's talk about eye contact itself, because this is uniquely human in its intensity and meaning. Most animals avoid prolonged eye contact. It's threatening, aggressive, but humans use eye contact extensively to show interest, to build connection, to communicate trust. Prolonged eye contact between humans can be intimate, romantic, or intimidating depending on context. We have this complex relationship with direct gaze that no other species has, and it's enabled by white eyes, because we can make eye contact without ambiguity. We know when someone is looking directly at us. With dark eyes, you'd have to guess based on head orientation. It'd be less precise, less meaningful. But with white eyes, eye contact is unmistakable. You know when someone is holding your gaze, and this creates all sorts of social dynamics: power, intimacy, challenge, connection. There's even a phenomenon called the eye contact effect. When two people make prolonged eye contact, their heart rates synchronize, their brain activity synchronizes. They literally become physiologically connected through eye contact alone. This has been measured in studies, and it only happens with direct mutual gaze. It's a form of nonverbal bonding, unique to humans, enabled by white eyes. Let's explore what happens when gaze communication breaks down, because this reveals how important it is for normal human social function. Autism spectrum disorder often involves differences in gaze processing. Many autistic individuals find eye contact uncomfortable or overwhelming. They might avoid it entirely, or use it differently than neurotypical people. This isn't a deficit, it's a difference, but it can affect social communication. Because so much human interaction relies on gaze exchange, if you don't follow gaze cues, or don't use eye contact in expected ways, social interaction becomes more difficult. This shows how central gaze is to typical human social behavior. We rely on it constantly. Certain neurological conditions also affect gaze processing. Prosopagnosia is face blindness. People with this condition can't recognize faces, but they can still follow gaze, still use eye contact, because that's processed separately in the brain. There are also rare conditions where gaze following specifically is impaired. People can see fine, can recognize faces, but can't accurately determine where someone is looking. This makes social interaction confusing and exhausting, because they're missing crucial information. All of this shows that gaze communication is a specific ability, supported by specific brain regions, and white eyes are part of the hardware that makes it work. Sleep well. Dream of eyes that speak volumes without words. Good night. But there's more to explore, because white eyes connect to so many aspects of human uniqueness. Let's talk about the evolution of the face more broadly, because white eyes don't exist in isolation. The human face is unusual. Compared to other primates, we have flatter faces, smaller jaws, less prominent brow ridges, and more visible eyes. Our eyes are larger relative to our face than other primates. This makes eyes even more prominent, more central to facial expression. White sclera amplifies this, makes the eyes the focal point. Some researchers think the evolution of the face and the evolution of white eyes are connected. That as humans developed more complex social communication, the face became more expressive, and eyes became more visible and informative. This would explain why white eyes correlate with other facial features. Flat face, prominent eyes, expressive features. It's all part of a package, a suite of adaptations for face-to-face communication. Now let's discuss the role of whites in nonverbal communication more generally, because gaze is just one aspect. The amount of visible sclera also conveys information. When you're surprised or scared, your eyes widen. More white shows. This is universal. Across all cultures, it's an automatic response, and it communicates emotion instantly, even from a distance. Other people see the increased sclera and know you're alarmed, without you saying anything. This can be adaptive. If one person spots danger and their eyes widen, others see it and become alert too. It's a silent alarm system, built into the face. When you're relaxed, your eyes are partially closed. Less sclera shows. When you're interested or surprised, they open wide. More sclera. This gives others information about your emotional and cognitive state. And again, white sclera makes all of this more visible, more effective as communication. There's also something called sanpaku in some Eastern traditions. This is when you can see white above or below the iris when looking straight ahead. In traditional belief systems, this was thought to indicate imbalance or misfortune. Whether this has any truth is debatable, but it shows how sensitive people are to sclera visibility patterns. We notice these tiny variations and we attribute meaning to them. Let's talk about individual differences in white eyes, because while everyone has white sclera, there are subtle variations. Some people have very bright, clear whites. Others have slightly yellowed or grayed whites. Some have prominent blood vessels. Others have clear sclera. Some have large, round eyes with lots of visible sclera. Others have narrower eyes with less. All of these variations are normal, but they affect perception. Studies show that people with clearer, whiter sclera are perceived as healthier, younger, and more attractive. This has led to the cosmetic industry selling eye whitening products, drops that reduce redness, make sclera appear brighter. This only matters because humans value white sclera, because it's part of our species' identity. If we had dark eyes, none of this would matter. Now let's explore the question of why white eyes emerged in humans specifically. Why not in other intelligent social animals? Dolphins are highly intelligent, highly social, cooperative hunters, but they don't have white sclera. Their eyes are entirely dark. Elephants have complex social structures, long memories, emotional depth, but their eyes are dark too. Corvids, crows, and ravens are among the smartest animals. They use tools, recognize faces, plans for the future, but their eyes are dark. So intelligence alone doesn't explain white eyes. Social complexity alone doesn't explain it. There's something specific about human evolution, human ecology, human social structure. That made white eyes beneficial, and we're still trying to figure out what that is. One possibility is language. Language and gaze are deeply connected. When we talk, we use gaze to manage turn-taking. You look at me when you finish speaking. This signals your turn. I look at you when I'm listening. This signals engagement. We glance away when we're thinking. This signals still processing, not done yet. All of this happens automatically, but it's crucial for smooth conversation, and it requires visible gaze. White eyes make it easier. Maybe white eyes co-evolved with language. As language became more complex, gaze communication became more important, and selection favored whiter sclera to support linguistic communication. This is speculative, but it's plausible, because humans are the only animals with both complex language and white eyes. The two might be connected. Another possibility is teaching. Humans teach more than any other species. We actively instruct others, show them how to do things, and teaching requires joint attention. The teacher needs to direct the learner's attention to specific details. Look here. See this? Now watch what I do. All of this is easier with white eyes. The learner can follow the teacher's gaze precisely. Maybe white eyes evolved to support teaching, to enable knowledge transfer, and this gave humans a massive advantage. We could accumulate culture, build on previous generations' knowledge. White eyes might be part of what makes cumulative culture possible. Again, speculative, but interesting. Let's talk about comparative anatomy more carefully, because saying no other animal has white eyes needs qualification. A few species do have lighter colored sclera in certain contexts. Some horses have prominent whites, especially when their eyes roll back in fear. But this is different from humans. Horse whites aren't normally visible, only in extreme expressions. Humans show whites all the time, in neutral gaze, in every direction of looking. Some dog breeds have been selectively bred for more visible sclera. Certain expressions like puppy dog eyes involve showing whites below the iris, but this is artificial selection. Humans bred dogs to have more expressive faces, and even then, it's not as pronounced as human whites. In the wild, canid species don't show whites. There are a few primate species with slightly lighter sclera than average, but none approach the brightness of human whites, and none have the high contrast between iris and sclera that humans have. So the statement stands: humans are unique in having truly white, highly visible sclera. We're alone in this trait. Among all mammals, all primates, all animals. Let's explore the neuroscience of gaze processing, because the ability to use white eyes effectively requires brain specialization. The superior temporal sulcus, STS, is a brain region involved in processing biological motion and social cues. It's particularly responsive to gaze direction. When you see someone's eyes move, your STS lights up. This region helps you determine where they're looking, what they're paying attention to. Damage to the STS can impair gaze following, even if vision is otherwise normal. The fusiform face area, FFA, processes faces, and eyes are a crucial part of face recognition. The FFA is particularly sensitive to the eye region. It extracts information about gaze, emotion, identity. White sclera makes the eyes more salient, easier for the FFA to process. There's also the amygdala. This processes emotion, particularly fear. The amygdala responds strongly to direct gaze, especially threatening gaze. Studies show that direct eye contact activates the amygdala, even unconsciously. This creates the feeling of being watched, the awareness of another person's attention. White eyes make direct gaze more detectable, even in peripheral vision, so they engage the amygdala more effectively. All of this neural machinery evolved to use gaze information, and white eyes are part of the input that these systems process. They're part of the hardware that makes human social cognition so sophisticated. Now let's discuss cross-cultural universals in gaze behavior. Because if white eyes are a human universal, we'd expect gaze communication to be universal too. And it is, to a degree. All cultures use gaze to communicate attention, interest, emotion. All cultures have norms about eye contact, though the specific norms vary. All cultures recognize that eyes reveal internal states. Happiness makes eyes bright. Sadness makes them dull. Anger makes them intense. These associations are universal, found in every culture studied. They're probably biological, built into the human brain. And they're made possible by white eyes, by the visibility and expressiveness of the eye. But cultural differences exist too. As mentioned, Western cultures generally value direct eye contact. Many Eastern cultures value more modest gaze, especially in hierarchical relationships. Some cultures use gaze to regulate personal space. Looking away gives someone privacy. Others use gaze to show respect or disrespect by staring. These variations show that while the hardware, white eyes, is universal, the software, cultural norms, varies. We all have the same anatomy, but we use it differently depending on cultural context. Let's talk about the future of white eyes, because human evolution hasn't stopped. We're still evolving. Will white eyes persist? Will they change? It's hard to predict, because evolution depends on selection pressures. And in the modern world, many selection pressures have changed. We don't face predators anymore, so the vulnerability of white eyes is less relevant. We live in larger social groups, so cooperation is even more important. But we also use technology, screens, sunglasses, virtual communication. These might reduce the importance of direct gaze. If we communicate more through text and screens, gaze becomes less important. Maybe future humans will value white eyes less. Maybe the trait will change, or maybe the opposite. Maybe as the world becomes more crowded and complex, gaze communication becomes even more valuable. Maybe white eyes will be more important than ever. We can't know. But it's interesting to consider. One thing is certain. For now, white eyes are part of what makes us human. They're part of our species' identity, our evolutionary heritage, and they enable a form of communication that's uniquely human. Silent, powerful, constant. The communication of eyes. Let's talk about what happens when you try to hide your gaze. Because even with white eyes, people develop strategies. Sunglasses are the most obvious. They completely hide gaze direction. This is why they're used in poker, in negotiations, in situations where you don't want to give information away. People also learn to control gaze consciously. Experienced liars know to maintain eye contact, to not glance away suspiciously. Poker players develop poker faces that include controlling eye movements, but these are learned strategies. They require effort. The default is that white eyes reveal gaze, and most people most of the time aren't controlling it, so you can read their attention, their interest, their intentions. This is what makes white eyes so powerful. They're an honest signal by default. You have to work to hide what they reveal. And even then, Micro-expressions often give you away. Your eyes flicker to something of interest, just for a fraction of a second, but people see it, even unconsciously, because we're so attuned to eye movements. Now let's address an interesting question. Are there downsides to white eyes? Beyond the vulnerability issue we've discussed, one potential downside is UV damage. Dark sclera contains melanin, which provides some protection from ultraviolet radiation. White sclera has little melanin, so it's more vulnerable. Over a lifetime of sun exposure, this could lead to eye problems. Pterygium is a growth on the sclera, more common in people with high sun exposure. Pingicula is another sun-related condition. Yellowish deposits on the sclera. These aren't serious usually, but they show that pale sclera is more vulnerable to sun damage than dark sclera. However, humans have other adaptations that compensate. Our eyelids are protective. We blink frequently. We squint in bright light. And we can wear sunglasses, use hats, avoid excessive sun exposure. So the UV vulnerability is manageable, not a serious evolutionary disadvantage. Another potential downside is disease visibility, because white sclera makes health problems obvious. Bloodshot eyes indicate illness or substance use. Yellowed eyes indicate liver problems. This could be a disadvantage if it makes you seem weak or vulnerable to others, but it could also be an advantage, allowing others to notice when you're sick and offer help. In a cooperative species, visible health indicators might be beneficial. Let's talk about the emotional impact of eyes. Because white eyes make the eyes so prominent, they have powerful emotional effects. Looking into someone's eyes creates intimacy, connection. This is why eye contact is important in relationships, romantic, familial, friendly. It's also why avoiding eye contact feels cold, distant. When someone won't look at you, it feels like rejection. All of this emotional power comes from the visibility of eyes. If we had dark eyes, eye contact would be less meaningful, less intimate. But white eyes make every glance significant. There's also the phenomenon of crying. Tears are very visible against white sclera. This makes crying a powerful emotional signal. Everyone can see when you're upset, even from a distance. This might seem like a vulnerability, and sometimes it is, but it also allows others to offer comfort, to know when you need support. In a social species, emotional transparency can be beneficial, and white eyes contribute to that transparency. Let's discuss individual variation in gaze behavior, because not everyone uses gaze the same way. Some people are high gazers. They make lots of eye contact. Look at faces frequently. Others are low gazers. They avoid eye contact. Look away more often. These differences are partly personality. Extroverts tend to be high gazers, introverts low, but they're also cultural. As we've discussed, norms vary. There are also gender differences. In many cultures, women make more eye contact than men. And age differences. Children tend to follow adult gaze more than adults follow child gaze. All of this shows that while white eyes are universal, how we use them varies. We have flexibility in our gaze behavior. We adapt to context, culture, individual preference. But the underlying hardware, white sclera, is the same for everyone. Let's talk about what white eyes reveal about human evolution more broadly, because this trait is part of a larger pattern. Humans are uniquely adapted for social communication. We have complex language, nuanced facial expressions, elaborate gestures. White eyes are part of this package. They're one of many features that support our extreme sociality. And this suggests something about human evolutionary history. At some point, social communication became so important that it drove physical changes, changes to the face, the voice, the eyes. We became optimized for face-to-face interaction, for reading each other, understanding each other, coordinating with each other. This is what allowed humans to dominate the planet. Not raw strength, not speed, not physical prowess, but coordination, cooperation, communication. And white eyes are a small but significant part of that story. They're evidence of how far evolution will go to enhance social communication, even creating a trait that seems like it should be a vulnerability. Because in the human social environment, the benefits outweighed the costs. Sleep well. Dream of eyes that speak without words, of gazes that connect souls. And remember, every time you look into someone's eyes, you're using a feature that exists in no other species, a window into the mind, made possible by evolution, by white sclera, that simple, elegant adaptation, that mystery. We can't fully explain it, can't say definitively why it evolved, but we can appreciate it. Use it. Recognize it as part of what makes us human. Those white eyes, looking back at you from the mirror. Unique, universal, powerful. Good night.